everyone. Welcome to the Perseverance Theater Women in Theater Community Conversation. I'm Allison Holtkamp, and I'm the Vice President of the Board of the Perseverance Theater. Please join Perseverance Theater in acknowledging that we reside on the unceded territories of the Akwon, colonially known as Douglas and Juneau, Alaska. We acknowledge that the Tlingit peoples have been stewards of this land since time immemorial, and we are grateful for that care. We recognize the series of unjust actions that attempted to remove them from their land, which includes forced relocations and the burning of villages. We honor the relationships that exist between Tlingit peoples, their lands, their ancestors, and future generations. We aspire to work toward healing and liberation, recognizing our paths are intertwined in the complex histories of colonization in Alaska. We acknowledge that we arrived here by listening to the peoples, elders, and lessons from the past, and these stories carry us as we weave a healthier world for future generations. We also invite you to join us in honoring and expressing deep gratitude to the Dena'ina peoples of South Central Alaska, where we also conduct our work in what is colonially known as Anchorage, Alaska. Join with us in finding ways to recognize, honor, and enact this acknowledgement in meaningful ways. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Natives have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of Alaska. One cannot be without the other. To love Alaska and call it home requires honoring this truth. Alaska is and always has been a Native place. It is our responsibility to act accordingly. As a creative company, we are committed to learning from, meaningfully including, holding space, and strengthening our work with Alaska Native peoples. We seek to build a right relationship with the Native peoples of Alaska because it will make our work better and because it is the right thing to do. Perseverance Theater honors and respects the culture, traditions, languages, and ways of life of the Alaska Native and all Indigenous ancestors, elders, their descendants, Gunashchish, Hawa, Ndoyaksen, Chinan, Geli. I am so excited to be able to moderate this conversation with two of my Perseverance Theater heroes. Leslie Ishi has been the Perseverance Theater Artistic Director since 2019. She has directed plays across the country, including at Pangea World Theater, East West Players, Artists at Play, and Oregon Shakespeare Festival. She worked on the Oregon Shakespeare Festival's EDIA initiative and spent time with Native Voices Dramaturgy, where she began the Northwest Asian American Theater. She is actively involved in many organizations, including the Coalition of Nonprofit Professional Theaters. She's the board president of the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists, a committee member of the National New Play Network, a founder of the National Cultural Navigation Theater Project for the Sustainability of Artists and Theaters of Color, and an original core faculty with art equity working through the country with arts and cultures organizations. She is the recipient of many awards and is also an actor appearing in film and television, regional theater, and Broadway. Please join me in welcoming Perseverance Theater's Artistic Director, Leslie Ishi.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for that gracious introduction, Allison. It's great to be here.
It's so nice to see you on this snowy day in Juneau.
I know. Happy spring.
Yeah, the first day of spring. Well, I also am really excited to introduce our next guest. Molly Smith founded Perseverance Theater in 1979, where she served as artistic director until she moved on to be the artistic director of Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. in 1998. Playwright Paula Vogel received the Pulitzer Prize for Drama for How I Learned to Drive, which was written and developed at Perseverance Theater while Molly was artistic director. Molly now has more than 30 directing credits at Arena Stage. Her directorial work has also been seen on Broadway, off-Broadway, Portland Center Stage, Canada's Shaw Festival, the Court Theater, the Old Globe, and many others. Molly has been a leader in new play development for over 40 years. She has championed projects including Dear Evan Hansen and Next to Normal. During her time with the company, Arena Stage has workshopped more than 100 productions, produced 46 world premieres, staged numerous second and third productions, and been an important part of nurturing 9 projects that went on to have a life on Broadway. And in 2014, Molly made her Broadway debut directing The Velocity of Autumn. In 2018, she was honored as Person of the Year by the National Theater Conference and inducted into the Washington, D.C. Hall of Fame. In December 2019, she was awarded the Director of Distinction in Cairo, Egypt from the Academy of Arts. During the pandemic, she developed the concept for 2 online films, May 22nd, 2020, and The 51st State. She also spearheaded a variety of new online content, including a weekly talk show, Molly's Salon, during the live performance hiatus. Please welcome Perseverance Theater's founder, Molly Smith.
Yeah. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Allison.
Hello.
Allison, thank you for that introduction. Did I really do all that stuff?
You did. I am so excited to see both of you. Good evening, Molly, since you're
Good
in
evening. And I'm sorry to say that it is spring here and it's 58 degrees and well, it's not sunny now because it's nighttime. It's 8 o'clock, but it's been a beautiful spring day and all the crocuses are coming out and tulips and yeah, it's a beautiful day.
Well, before we jump into the conversation, I am so excited. I've been hearing a lot of things about Arena Stage and projects that have been going on there, and I'm particularly excited about one that's coming up that even has commissioned Frank Katass, who is one of Perseverance Theater's company members. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. It's called Indigenous Earth Voices, and it is stories coming from 6 different storytellers, 4 in the United States and 2 in Canada. It's from the Cree people. It is from the Chupik people. As a matter of fact, Earl Achak is one of the people who was interviewed. And Earl wrote the first play by a Native American for Perseverance Theater called Between Two Worlds. And this was in 94. So it'd be exciting to just look that up in the history. He's extraordinary, subsistence hunter and fisherman. He's absolutely brilliant. But we also have brought in the Hawaiian people. There are people coming in from the Zuni people, from the Shoshone people. My partner, Suzanne Blue Star Boy, is a cultural consultant on it, whom both of you know, and people in Alaska know her too. We also have brought in probably 10 different pieces of music from Indigenous writers that will be woven within it. These 6 stories came from the storytellers. The writers interviewed them for anywhere from an hour to 5 hours and then have focused it in 10-minute pieces. It will also be woven with imagery from those parts of the country that they are from. It'll be at about an hour long, and I'm really pleased to say that Leslie has agreed to launch it at the same time that we will, at the same time that the Kennedy Center, Woolly Mammoth, some wonderful companies in Canada, and some tribes are going to be launching it at the same time as well in June.
Oh, that is so exciting. I didn't know a lot of that. And actually, in looking at questions to ask you, one of the questions that I was just asking people around town, what should I ask Molly and Leslie? And one of the questions was, who was the first Native playwright at Perseverance Theater? And you said it already. So that's exciting. I can't wait for that. That sounds really cool. Perseverance Theater has some events coming up, and we're going to talk about those a little bit later on. But I am really interested in diving into this conversation, and something that I'm really personally interested in, and it seems like a lot of people that I've talked to, are your stories about how you got into theater, particularly as women, paving the way, breaking the glass ceiling. Molly, you were one of the first to break the glass ceiling in theater, and then moving on to a theater that was founded partly by a woman too at Arena Stage. So it's really exciting. So I want to hear a little bit about how you did that, how you had the gumption. What made you do that?
Well, I was 19 years old, traveling with backpack in Europe. And I was with a friend. I was in a pre-law degree at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. That's what I thought I'd go into. But on that trip, I just thought, no, I'm going to follow my heart, not my head. This is my passion. I want to start a theater in Juneau. So I went back and I told my professors at the University of Alaska, and they patted me on the shoulder and they said, "That's very nice, dear." And I left. And I went to the East Coast then to finish my undergrad at Catholic University, where I met Paula Vogel. And then I finished my graduate degree there at American University, all the time with this idea in my mind. Now, I don't really feel like I learned quite as much through the university system. Where I learned is I worked in a lot of small theaters in Washington, D.C. New Playwrights Theater taught me how to read plays. I taught for Joy Zinnemann in her studio company about how to break down acting. I would go to a theater and I'd say, "Teach me how to hang lights." I'd go to another theater and say, "Teach me how to do the box office. I'll do it for free." So basically, I created my own internships. And then Billy and I drug 50 used theater seats across the country to start Perseverance Theater. And I thought it would take 5 years. And within 6 months, I met the most important people in my life, Kate Bounds and Jack Cannon and Joe Ross and my former husband, Bill Ray, and galvanized them into this idea of starting the theater. And my mother and I fleeced $12,000 from my grandmother as a loan to start the theater, promising her that we would pay it back within a year. And if we didn't, we'd pay it back with a lot of interest. And we did within a year. But the first project was Pure Gold. And that put a stamp for me on Perseverance Theater because it was interviewing 35 pioneers of the area, from the Tlinkits to the Filipinos, to the people who were the bankers, the people who were the bear hunters. I mean, interviewing all of them and putting it together in a reader's theater piece. Susie Gregg Fowler, who's still in Juneau, did that. And then cast the best 6 storytellers. And they were all 70, 80, 90 years old, and they were brilliant. And that eventually ran, I don't know what it was, 200 times, 250 times. Went around the state, was made into a documentary. So that was the beginning. But as a woman, part of what I would say is when I was in Washington, D.C., I was not able to direct. Only men were able to direct. I tried to direct at lots of different theaters. It just did not happen. So this was when I was in my early 20s and I was a director. But finally, the Washington area feminist theater offered me a directing gig, and I directed 2 different projects for them. And so at that time, women the number of women who were directing had to be like 5%. And that would have been over 45 years ago, right? It was very, very difficult to be able to break through. So one of the ways you break through is you create your own theater. And that's essentially what I did. But I didn't create it just to direct. I created it because I was absolutely driven to get back to Alaska and create theater of, by, and about Alaskans.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Just hearing you talk about how when you came up here and expected it to take a long time, and then there were a bunch of people that helped you is so Juneau. It just feels like you ask for something and people show up, which is one of my favorite things about being here.
And if I didn't mention Joe Ross, he was part of it too. He's still there. He's still there. Yeah.
I just did a project with his daughter, and we had a conversation about how he helped start Perseverance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am so excited that we have another woman artistic director now at Perseverance Theater. I feel like we've been desperate for it for a long time, and I'm so excited. Leslie, I want you to, I would love to hear your story in have you always wanted to run a theater, and what has made you have that desire? What's your greatest motivation behind that?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Well, actually, I started out, my great aunt was a pioneer in modern dance, Martha Nishitani in Seattle. So I started out as a child dancing with her. And I thought I'd dance. And then my aunt also danced. So there was then 3 generations of modern dance. I think now we call it contemporary dance. So I thought I would be dancing. But I started playing clarinet as a young child in public school. And I ended up majoring in music at the University of Washington in clarinet performance. So, and actually, I went into that because I didn't think I was good enough at math, even though I'm Asian and we get stereotyped as certain subjects. But I wasn't the worst, but I could tell that's not my gift. I like to read. I like to, hear stories. I liked just the arts, I think, and the culture of the Japanese culture. So I thought, well, I'll just go into music because I could do that. I was pretty good at clarinet. And then at one point in school, I started taking classes, conducting, composition, and music analysis. And I loved analyzing a score. And I thought, I want to be a maestro. I think I'd be a good conductor. Something about the movement of conducting and interpreting the music. And then when they said, that's great, and you'll conduct choir. And I went, oh, but I'd like to do the orchestra. And they're like, you'll conduct choir. And I went, oh, no, you misunderstand. I want to conduct the orchestra. I'm an instrumentalist. And they wouldn't allow it. And so I thought, I was dancing at the university also. So I thought, well, I'll just stay focused on dance. But my clarinet teacher didn't want me to quit. So well, maybe I'll be a performer. I'll just be in the orchestra or eventually dance. So then a friend actually said, I think you need to come and be in this reading at the Northwest Asian American Theater, which is now actually defunct. And it was my debut on stage, was a reading called Breaking the Silence. And it was about Gordon Hirabayashi and the 3 generations of Japanese Americans. I'm 4th generation, but the first generation that came, the first 2 generations then that were incarcerated during World War II. And the 3rd generation, their children, who at this point in time had become lawyers and were like Gordon's, Minyasui's. There was a number of cases that came up because they resisted the camps. So here I am in this first play about the camp experience. And we didn't know if anybody would come. I said, well, my mom and dad will come. It's my first time doing something like this. And it was a reading for Gordon Hirabayashi's Legal Defense Fund. And so we thought, well, there's some local activists that were going to help host, and they were wonderful allies. We packed the place. It was University of Washington Student Hub, their big auditorium. The community showed up. All the activists showed up. And my dad came to me at intermission and said, the men are crying in the bathroom. And I went, are they okay? He goes, no, it's a good thing. They're healing. And I went, oh my gosh. And then I learned that one of our elders passed out because it was such an intense experience. But people revived her. She was okay. She wanted to stay because hearing their stories was so affirming. So I basically witnessed the Japanese American community begin their healing process. And that's when I knew stories are powerful. They're so powerful. This is what it can do. And that's what sent me in that direction. And then actually 2 years later, I had the great honor and fortune that my grandmother testified, and all these same elders that the stories in the play were based on, they came forth and testified at the commission on hearing, the commissions, the hearings, to win redress and reparations, where those lawyers were present. I was in the courtrooms, and I got to stand in the back and just witness them give testimony. And that, I think, is what set the course to knowing the power of story could actually create laws. It could create and bring about giving voice and justice. And I was raised kind of an activist community builder with my parents, who helped folks as they grew up, had us. They were very much involved in creating meal programs to give back, since folks helped them when they were homeless when they got out of camp and resettled. So there's a lot of Japanese Americans throughout the Northwest that are very engaged in social justice and community organizing in order to support those who are vulnerable or less fortunate or marginalized. So that combination with theater just kind of set the course. But I never thought I'd be an artistic director. I was a freelance person, being an activist, being a director. Oh, I was an actor, eventually became a director. But if I'm called to service, I will serve. And I was invited to apply. So then I did, and here I am. Yeah.
Well, I am so grateful that you are here, and I'm excited too, because when you joined Perseverance Theater almost immediately, not immediately, but shortly after, we had to shut down and
Right.
kind of be a little bit separate from our community. And so this makes me really excited, especially because I'm seeing in a little comment section on the side of our screen here that people are joining. And I want to say, for anyone watching, if you have any questions for Molly or Leslie, please put them in the chat, because we're going to try to get to a few of them a little bit later. Leslie, you touched on your activism, and I was just wondering if you could maybe talk about some things that are happening right now related to the tragedy in Atlanta.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, we would definitely be remiss. We know now the 8 people who've been really murdered, and it was very much, there's a lot of question, was it racial? I would say yes, it's racial, very targeted, and the majority of those victims, Asian women. So I'm currently, as you mentioned, thank you again for that gracious introduction, the board president at the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists. So I've been, since that happened, organizing nationally to bring Asian artists together, Asian Pacific Islanders together in the theater field. And we'll be coming out in this next week with ways to empower ourselves, be working together so that these kinds of things never happen to anyone else. And of course, campaigns against hate crime, right? Against hate. So, and I'll be engaging Molly to support us to amplify this campaign. And so will Perseverance be also, of course, working in concert with us. And we're asking all theaters to work in concert, because we have the power with our stories to change the narrative, work against stereotypes, how women were exoticized, we're fetishized, we're racialized, if you will, all these terms, right? But how can we help shift the narrative? How can we continue to support our businesses? And so that they're not a bad place to go. Asian food, Asian businesses of all types, very much in concert and in solidarity with the Black Lives Movement. Don't be afraid of Black people. They're incredible humans in our communities. They have wonderful business. Help support them, lift them up. So the same here. We all work together and what that does is it knits our communities to have those safety nets where we help each other in difficult times. And we can, as you said, Molly, we will get through this and we'll be better for it, especially when we come together. So I appreciate you asking. Yeah, please. Also, a lot of these things go unreported. As you know, Allison had a moment at one of our grocery stores, so our theater's working to be supportive of our staff. How can we do that with our community members? Help protect each other. Don't be silent. Don't be alone. If something happens, report it to the store manager. If something happens, share it with your family and friends so they can help you heal and recover, be resilient. Yeah. So I appreciate you asking. It's all over on the news, isn't it? So we're all touched by it too.
Yeah. It's such it's a complicated new time. And before we started this, you asked Molly a little bit about what it's like in Washington, D.C. right now. And so I'm interested in that. What's it like?
Well, one piece of happy news is Suzanne and I drove downtown today, and all along Pennsylvania Avenue, our wonderful mayor, Muriel Bowser, has hung flags with 51 stars, meaning that Washington, D.C. will be the next state. Now, we know there's a long road to go, but I love her chutzpah. She's the one who wrote Black Lives Matter all along a huge avenue, and that is still very much in place. And I wanted to drive down and see what was happening at the Capitol building, because we'd gone down on a few days after the insurrection to be able to see all of the fencing up and around the entire building. We'd been there 2 weeks before that time when there was already a lot of protests that were coming into the city. And happily, they're beginning to take some of the fencing down. They're beginning to take some of the barbed wire down, because I think we need to be able to move past this. We need to be able to move into a place where people are, of course, protected, but also that we're a free and open society. And everybody needs to continue to be brave in the middle of this. Our Congress needs to keep uncovering what happened at the insurrection. There's over 300 people that have been brought in legally to this and have been charged. And I think that work really needs to continue, because this was a heinous attack on all of us. And it continues with our beautiful Asian population, with what's going on right now. I mean, it's white supremacy in full force.
Yes.
And we have, for me, a fantastic president and a fantastic vice president. They're open, they're out there. The fact that he's already hit his 100 million shots in the arm is incredible. He's traveling around the country to talk about what they're doing with the rescue plan. He's taking care of us. I feel every morning I don't wake in a sweat to see what's in the newspaper. He's moving through it. I mean, I really think he's a transformational president. And for everybody who said, oh, he's sleepy, he's not as interesting as Warren, he's not as interesting as whoever else, but he's like steady as potatoes, and he just keeps making headway with Kamala. I mean, they are a dynamic duo. We're going to get that infrastructure bill. I'm really, really hopeful that we get rid of parts of the filibuster so that we can knock out these laws that have to do with voting rights. I mean, we're in trouble in this country if we don't do it. And I love that Schumer's saying failure is not an option. So there's all those areas that I feel tremendous hope in, Allison. And yet we are a bruised country. We are a fractured country. We are a country that is slogging through everything right now. And it needs all of us with our ebullient personalities in the arts, our drive to both uncover what's going on and bring joy into people's lives, bring joy into children's lives, into families' lives. That's the spirit of what knits us together. And it's always artists through our imaginations. That's our greatest gift, and that's free. Through our imaginations that will help move our country out of this. That's our job. President has his job. Economists have our job, their jobs. We have our job, and that's what we need to do. So I'm braced by that. I'm excited by that challenge. And I know Leslie is too, because I know the kind of great artistic director you are, Leslie. And I'm so proud that you are artistic director of Perseverance Theater, and I'm really happy that you're there. And I know that we will move through all of this together.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Molly. My goodness. I feel like I get to pick up the mantle of community that you really began with. It's so exciting for me to be able to get deep in community here and appreciate Alaska and the Alaskans. They're a tremendous, really many peoples here. It's just amazing.
Leslie, I have to tell you, when I started talking about community many, many years ago, I was pillared around the country. I was pillared at the NEA. I was pillared in conversation with artists. So even though we now toss around the word community and we talk about different communities, it was a dirty word. It was thought of as community theater, not professional theater. You're ridiculous. What are you talking about? This has nothing to do with theater. I said, it does, because we gain energy from community. We co-create with community. It's all part of it. And I was almost knocked out of an NEA meeting because of it. It was fascinating. Got into real arguments with some of the icons of the American theater about it. And I thought, whoa, there's so much blowback on this idea. It must be a good idea. That's how I know when something's a good idea, when there's too much blowback on it.
Yeah. You must be innovative. You must be at that cutting edge, right? Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That is like, that's given me a little boost. Yeah, we get a lot of, ooh, okay, sorry, that gave me a little boost as a woman. So thank you.
Right.
I want to remind everyone watching that if you have any questions for Molly or Leslie, please put them in the chat, because I'm curious about so many things. But just in this conversation with you guys talking about, basically like art as a revolution, kind of. That's what I was getting from you, Molly, as you were talking. One big thing that I'm curious about in all of your work, leading theaters, being artists, what is different now than, say, 30 years ago?
Well, I'm going to jump in here, Leslie, because the not-for-profit movement, which was started about 70 years ago by 3 intrepid women, 2 in Texas and Zelda Fitch-Handler, believed that you could do great theater outside of New York. Before that time, there were touring groups, there were some profit-making theaters, there was Broadway. And they believed you could do brilliant theater in your own community. And they really started the resident theater movement. Okay, now that was 60, 70 years ago. That is a movement because we now have more than 1,000 theaters around the country in every single state. That's a movement that has been won. That is a revolution that has been won. And now it's, what's the next revolution, right? And I think that's where we are moving now. What is that next revolution? And I think one of the biggest changes that's happened in the last 30 years is there's been something that has happened with theaters all over the country that has to do with project sharing, with relationship sharing, with idea sharing, that probably 40 years ago, it was not as fervent as it is now. I think that people are knitting together in a really different way. And I would say, Leslie, I don't know if you found this, even more in the pandemic. I can't tell you how many groups that I am part of online as everybody is struggling their way to figure out what to do in the middle of the pandemic, how to do really vital online work, how to really answer the Black Lives Matter movement, how to answer We See White American Theater, how to look at it deeply in people's own organizations, and how to take care of our staff and our artists. Right now, there's a big fight in terms of equity, which is the union for both actors and also stage managers, because the union probably about 10 days ago put so many more restrictions on projects that we probably had another 20 or 30 projects around the country that had to be knocked down, that theaters are not able to do because they're way too expensive. So I would encourage any actor who is listening to this, who is a part of equity, go online. There's a letter now that has about 2,000 signatures of people that are saying, we need a big open forum to talk to our leaders in equity about this. Because SAG-AFTRA, which is another union, is doing a much better job. This is probably too much insider baseball. But I think for people listening to it, to just know that the kind of warp and woof that is going on in the country is going on in the world of the theaters as well, because we are a direct reflection of the world. And I love, thank you, Summer, for what you wrote too. It was great to hear that.
I love that she's been directed by you. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I'm still a member of Actors Equity. I still keep paying my dues and being present. I think it's my way of advocating for actors, as well as being a part of the Stage Directors Choreographers Society. And I got my letter. So yet to your point, I got my letter. Yeah, I believe in having a voice so that we can help shape these things. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I am wondering, maybe it's because we're so divided and it's been a year since we've been around each other. One of my friends, when we were talking about questions for this, Do people still talk about feminism in theater, do you think? Is that still
Feminism, sexism, misogyny? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It is still still alive and well in a really intense way. The patriarchy is alive and well. It's the yes no culture. It's you can do that, you can't do that culture. Even at this point in my career, I'm 69 years old. I fight it almost every single day in one form or another. Yes, I do, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do. Leslie gets it, but I do. I do. In one form or another, I'm fighting it constantly.
Yeah,
and that makes me sad.
Yeah, it's like it's in the structure.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm sure, Molly, you're doing the same here at Perseverance. We're working to shift the structure of how we even run things.
Yeah.
So that it's more horizontal. Our staff then have more of a voice. They don't feel like I only can go to my direct report and or I have to live with it, I guess. I go, no, we don't live with, we live well. We can change that. We have to create the environment, the culture where we can go to the board and said, you know what, that policy's not working. And there was like, we can change that. I'm like, yeah, we can change that. And again, that takes me back as a young person, young adult, to that courtroom. We can change a policy. We can change a law. We can update something. Yeah, let's make it work for now, So when we change the structure, even to the point of the importance of casting, the importance of what plays we choose, how many women, we look at all of that. We're not trying to just be formulaic, but we're trying to be really thoughtful about inclusion. Give folks opportunities that didn't have them before, or continued opportunity. They're not one-offs. So how do we shift the culture of how we make decisions, as well as then how the art gets created, right? That's been really exciting for our team. And it's definitely, like you said, Molly, it's pushing back every day on that whole system, that structure that's been in place. So we're like, well, let's change the structure. I had an acupuncturist that said, Leslie, if you're feeling pain or uncomfortable, change your position. You don't have to hold there and to be in pain. Change your position. So I always took that to heart in a very deep way, that shift the position. Maybe it's the point of view. Maybe it's just how you organize that event. We do debriefs now, which apparently they didn't do more recent times. We debrief after everything. We take learnings forward. We push back against it all the time. And I'll say, as an Asian woman, I get racialized as nice Asian lady, or I'm kind of exoticized. That's all part of that, right?
Yes.
So I say, let's get to know each other better so that you see me as fully human. That's the goal. And I think theater can really do this well. Can we support each other to tell stories, get to know each other, so we see each other as human all the time, not dehumanized? Yeah.
Leslie, I just wanted to put an image in your head, because when we started Perseverance Theater, it started around my grandmother's round oak table that was 100 years old. And that, for me, was a hierarchical structure, was the flat round table. So everybody sat around it. I led, of course. There's always somebody who has to have final decision-making within any organization. But everybody led. Everybody led. Exactly. And that kind of flat hierarchical structure, I have to say, I tried to take it to Arena. We were able to do a bit of it, but it's problematic because it's an organization of about 150 people. And so it's much harder to do that kind of flattening. And yet it also is very possible to really encourage each person to lead.
Yes.
We all have something to say. We can all lead in different ways. I saw a question by Katie Jensen.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Katie.
Yeah, she said, Molly, you have taught me so much about how to be an artist and a giving artist. A question for both of you. Since the theater is male-dominated, theater world, how can we fight against this and work toward change? What can we as women artists do? How can we do this?
Speak up. Speak out. Sit down and talk to people about it. If you're feeling anything where you're feeling a pinch from somebody, or you're uncomfortable, sit down and say, I'm feeling this. This is what's going on. Stop it. I mean, honestly, it's as simple as that. Does that always shift it? Not always, because it's brittle. The system is brittle. But unless we're each speaking out, it won't change. It won't change because it'll go back to status quo. So those points where you feel like, well, I'll just sit back, that's a problem because the other part will move in. I don't know how you feel about it, Leslie.
Well, you just spurred my imagination to remember that I have a mentor that influenced me greatly, Yuri Kochiyama. She's passed now. She's more of an ancestor now. But she worked directly in the civil rights movement with Malcolm X. And she basically, she taught me, if you're not leading, you're probably victim. And I was like, what? Oh, yeah. If you're not leaning forward and leading, you're probably, like you said, Molly, sitting back and you become complicit. Or you're allowing yourself to be victimized if you haven't already been a victim somehow of racism, sexism, homophobia, all of the oppressions, different oppressions, or from class background, maybe. So she always taught me, you don't have to wait for someone to give you agency. Give yourself agency. Like you said, speak up. And leadership can be many things. It doesn't mean you have to be at the top, being the person, it can mean you just take initiative to start a conversation, to make a suggestion, or to go ahead and take some kind of action in your community and bring others with you. She also said, never lead alone. Never lead alone. That helps a lot.
She's so right about that. And it's also, leadership's about bravery. Leadership is about courage. And people will say to me, oh my gosh, how'd you have the courage to do that? And I say, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
And yet it had to be done. So being afraid is a part of this. It isn't that, oh my God, I wake up every day and I'm confident. Oh my God, I wake up every day and I can do this. Not at all. So those actions that you're talking about, Leslie, from small actions to larger actions, lean into the conflict. Be fearless around the conflict, because the conflict is really where the payoff is. Sometimes you have to get into conflict in order to move something forward.
Yeah. And isn't that what good plays are about? the dramatic conflict. We lean in as actors. We don't go, oh, I don't know. Then it's kind of a boring staging of a play. You lean in, right? Yeah. We're trained to lean into the conflict, actually.
But actors are trained to not take action. And, actors classically have not taken action because they wait to be cast in roles, right? It's a whole thing. Wait to be asked to the dance. And more I'm seeing actors taking action and speaking out in different ways. And to me, it's really heartening. I think, it's powerful, because there is power in this kind of a group dynamic.
You're reminding me, Molly, years ago at UC Irvine, right out of grad school, I got to be an adjunct professor in their drama program. And they said, what would you like to teach? And I said, well, and I had just gone to the World Women's Conference in China. This is like the mid to late 80s, or maybe it was 90s, but it was a while back. And I had learned how to, with some colleagues, we fundraised to get there. We became delegates for the non-governmental conference. So it was so empowering to get ourselves to China for the World Women's Conference. Wow. And so I said, I'd like to teach about that. So I created this class called The Self-Starter. And I found out in that program, they could apply for arts, for like an arts grant to create a project. And then I thought, nobody's applying. Why aren't the actors? Why aren't the artists, any of them? Creative teams, actors. And they said, well, because we're not science and we're not like medicine. I go, what? We do experiments every day. We'll just change the language. So we change it to findings, experiment, every time you run a scene and you try something new. And then the class had them, for the final, they had to fill out the grant application, have a project, know how to pitch it. And we did financial literacy, so they could make a budget and understand how to implement a project if they got the money and how to go forth. And they gathered the support for it. They had to have like another professor be their sponsor. So they basically had to learn to produce something, right? And it was interesting to me that it was those skills that helped them feel more like an artist than actually doing more of the art making. They said, now I feel like an artist, because they had the empowerment to create a project and to implement it. And that, I've never forgotten that. And that still, those learnings from my own students carries me forward.
I love that. You know, about 6 or 7 years ago, myself and 7 artistic directors here in Washington, D.C., created a Women's Voice Theater Festival, because we knew that only 20% of the plays that were being produced in the country were written by women. And we just said, that doesn't make sense. Now, again, I'm the only female artistic director in this group of 7 artistic directors. So that shows you where we still are in this country.
Yeah.
Anyway, we drove this and we did 50 new plays that were all produced during a 1-month period of time. Those plays, because I kept saying, we're not really going to know what effect this has until later. Those plays then had over 150 productions that went around the country. So I felt like, okay, this is a big success. And to answer your question, Katie, to go back to it, make sure you're producing plays that are written by women.
Yes,
Make sure you're having plays directed by women. Make sure you have, fight for an artistic director who's female. Make sure that you fight for designers who are female.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what breaks it, is that you are bringing in those leaders who are able to model female leadership.
And thank you for that, Molly, because you'd be surprised, once they have your theater, your project on their resume, that's like an endorsement for other artistic directors, other artistic leaders to also hire them. They've got to be able to get those credits. And we try to do the same. We've also worked to hire folks from the LGBT community, trans artists, those who are marginalized, women of color, Black, Indigenous women of color, on creative teams, backstage, as well as certainly actors that are out front telling the stories.
And be gutsy about doing great work. None of this is going to make a single bit of difference unless you are doing fiery work on stage. Look for the best writers. Look for the best directors. Look for the best stories. Just go.
I agree. This
No
is lighting
apologies.
a fire under me. I want to get to a couple of questions. One that really popped out at me. I remember a few years ago, Molly and I, we were having a conversation right after we literally just met. And I was like, I'm a comedian. I'm a stand-up comedian. Well, and you said, you were like, how is the comedy world responding to the Me Too movement? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. But Megan Benke, who has been in some Perseverance Theater shows, asked the question about, she said, could you both talk about how you have seen the Me Too movement playing out in the power dynamics of theater and productions, particularly with the nature of artist body as tool, exacerbating the vulnerability of female artists to both traditional and male gazes?
That's deep, because I think we're all in the same system, Megan.
Yeah.
We are all in the same system. I mean, part of the theater is about human beings. It is about the body. It's about the mind. It's about the flesh of the actor. It's about the voice. It's about all those places of a human being. And there also is always a sexuality on stage. Always, always, always. That's part of what attracts an audience to see people on stage, it's that vitality and that sexual energy. So I'm not quite sure how to answer your question. I do know that now people are questioning more what they're doing in terms of everything from costume design to some of the kinds of things, ways in which of working with people, working with intimacy coaches.
Yes.
So that even something as simple as a kiss on stage, in the old days, we just kind of move into, well, here's a kiss and this is the way you do it. Let's go for it. And now it's really working with an expert on the dynamics of you put your hand here, you move your head here, you do this here so that everybody has a degree of comfort in what could be an uncomfortable situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that. And then all the artists involved know what to expect. There's no surprises, right? That might trigger or be unaware or just disrespectful in the midst while you're on stage and you have an audience there witnessing you, you know. I would just add too that we're getting in equity, diversity, and inclusion and access best practices, which encompasses all of this. We're working more with staff on this as well. What is positional power and how do it can be abused and you don't even know you've slipped into that vein, you know? And then we're also getting really aware of how we impact our audience. So like you're saying, Molly, the intimacy coaches are aware that if we stage a fight or we stage an intimate scene, we know that eventually that has impact on our audiences too. So we're including all of you into that process and what that will mean, what you take away. Is there somebody who can be from the mental health community or from a local organization that will be available in the lobby to talk to? You know, we're looking at how we create support when there's a play because plays do, like you said, they're fiery or we bring sometimes really challenging subject matter that's important to talk about or important to hear and witness stories around. So we're just looking at around all aspects of it. How can we support our communities to address these issues, but also really have what we need to make sure we're doing it thoughtfully and with great care?
You know, it's a big question now in terms of projects not doing harm to people.
Yeah.
And I have to say that almost every play that you produce, if it is a strong play, there's a potential of harm there.
Mm-hmm.
We went through all the different plays that we've done at Arena Stage and looked at ones that were about provocative subject matter, difficult subject matter. 2/3 of them were, whether they were written by BIPOC artists or whether they were written by white artists. I mean, let's take a look at somebody like Tennessee Williams. Would you say some of his plays are about any kind of abuse? Yes, they are. Does that then mean, oh, we can't produce them anymore? No, not at all. Because I think that the theater is on the cutting edge of being able to produce work that may be difficult, troubling for a community, but finding a way to be able to do that within the context of the theater may be one of the best ways to experience something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask one or two more questions. People are pretty fired up, and thank you all so much for the questions that you are contributing. I saw one that popped up about representation and about wondering if it's more about lack of writers and artists or lack of understanding and appreciation of stories of Black, Indigenous people of color.
Not at all. I mean, stop by Arena Stage. Over 1/3 of what we do are by BIPOC artists. And that includes our designers, our directors, our writers. And that has then meant that 1/3 of our audience are people of color. Because I think whatever you produce within a 5-year period of time, that's the audience that you end up with. Your repertory is really your destiny. And do we want to do better? Absolutely. And we will do even more this next year. I'm really looking forward to that. But I would say there are absolutely brilliant BIPOC writers there, directors, designers, and they are coming more and more to the fore now. And it's very exciting times in that way. Leslie, what do you think?
I'm with you. As you can tell with our programming, we've been moving in that direction since I came. I'm from a marginalized group, so it makes sense for me to be really aware of what's missing, actually. And that's part of the societal pattern of, you mentioned earlier, Molly, white supremacy. Look, everyone's impacted by white supremacy, white people too. And what I share with folks is you don't realize that oppressive patterns that are so normalized steal everybody's humanity to the point where you forget or you don't see. it develops a kind of, or fosters even kind of, has a part in definitely keeping in place that implicit bias, so that you don't see that something's missing, or something's not right there, or out of balance, or just is harming somebody, like we just mentioned. So there's a way that when you begin to give voice, when you begin to create visibility for groups that have not been present, suddenly that community goes, oh, our story. They recognize themselves on stage. It's so affirming for their humanity. Again, here we are affirming people's humanity. And that means the theater really is for everybody. But if it's largely been predominantly white only, our communities don't think it's for us. But we kept saying, well, no, you can come. But as soon as you start to mix it up and you start to be inclusive, folks start to come forth. And then you get a really important conversation. You get community building. You can build that safety net. So when things go wrong, it's not like you haven't met those folks on that part of town. You've already come together to witness a story and have a community conversation after. You've already started to have those relationships build. And we're better for it, you know? Yeah. And there isn't a lack of artists. They've just been invisibilized. So we get, as women hold up half the sky. We get to go forth and do our thing and make sure we're bringing the community together. We're gatherers, right? Yeah, we're leaders that way.
Well, I have one more question that popped up, because we are still in a global pandemic and we're coming out of it. The good question is, do you see this pandemic break from live theater as an opportunity to change the course of the American theater? If so, where are we headed? Some think this could be a renaissance.
That's my husband, Wes. By the way, Molly, before you got there, Wes worked at Arena.
I know that. Hi, Wes. I'm so glad to see that. You know, Wes, I actually think that it is a renaissance. Theaters before were really afraid of any kind of online activity other than for advertising. And I think that we have vaulted into that with both feet and full hearts. And, you know, our communication level in these areas has been profound. Howdy. And I don't think that that's going to change when we go back into the theaters, because I think it'll probably be done in a smaller level, but it's going to be there. And I think what we've learned online is going to be pulled into the theater as well. I think all the things that we've learned in terms of care for artists, care for audiences, I think that that's going to be a real change. I think those areas that we're breaking down of systemic racism, that even areas that we weren't even aware of that are being changed, I think that this is, it's going to make a very different theater scene than we have had before. And I know we're going to stumble before we start running. And so watch for the stumbles and pick each other up as we go with kindness and generosity. Everybody needs to be allowed to make mistakes within this.
Absolutely. I mean, mistakes, aren't they? I learned very early on as an actor, when a mistake happens on stage, it's actually a happy accident, you know, because you pick up and you improvise and you go. I feel the same. I think it definitely is a renaissance. In fact, excuse me. My throat got a little dry. It's helped us reach out to all of Alaska in ways that we couldn't have, you know, or if folks couldn't get here in person. So I'm really excited about the future, so that we can, like you said, carry those learnings forward.
Absolutely. Me too. You know, when I was at Perseverance Theater for 19 years, we toured 70 different times. We were all the way out to Tooksuk Bay. We were at Kaufman Cove. We traveled on World War II beaver planes. We traveled on the ferry system. We just went. We had no money, and we just did it because we wanted to bring theater out to the people. And that was like some of the most exciting times I had at Perseverance Theater. And I'm always so happy when I hear you're continuing to do that, Leslie, or doing it in a digital way. Yeah. So keep going. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to get back to touring the Winter Bear Project. We're doing a digital version right now. but you know, it's helping us to make those relationships and maintain them digitally, so that when we are back out there, we haven't like had a pause there. We've had relationship building that I think will support it. Really excited. We had for Spirit of the Valley, which is coming back on demand because it was people want to see it. We had almost 1,000 teachers and students for the student matinee because they can tune in.
Wow.
It was revolutionary for us and for them. So we're really excited to keep it going. Absolutely. We'll get back in person too. We're excited for that, really. But it'll be a combo. Yeah.
Great.
Well, I kind of feel that without this pandemic, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation. Like, I wouldn't have been able to sit here and have a conversation with two of my heroes. My heart's pounding because I can't believe that this happened. This was really meaningful to me. So thank you so much. Molly, I know it's getting late where you are. Thank you so much for inspiring us, lighting a fire under me during a snowy day in Juneau. Thank you for taking time out of your life to be a part of this conversation and to be here as a Perseverance Theater icon and to give us history that I'm always just so hungry for. So thank you.
Well, I just want to say, Allison, you're a terrific artist. And that is one of the most gracious moderations that I've been a part of. So thank you so much for that. And Leslie, I'm so proud of you. Anytime you need anything, please just reach out and I will do the same with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Well, Leslie, since it is just me and you now, I know that you have a couple of exciting announcements about Perseverance.
I do. I know our dear Erica Stone, our Director of Marketing Engagement, sort of teased this the other day. And I was like, oh, Erica. She said, hey, we got this really cool thing coming. Well, I am very excited. I have a few announcements, as I mentioned, to share with you that Spirit of the Valley is back. It's on demand, folks, and it will be available through April 4th. So if you missed it, thank you, Frank Henry Koshka-Tass, our playwright. It's a gorgeous piece. Nobu Koch, local artist, did all the beautiful artistry. Thank you, Skylar. You were in it. And I saw Brienne. Brienne is with us today as well. Brienne's in the Winter Bear, so that's coming. We'll be able to bring that to the Northwest Arctic Borough digitally, and we'll see about being able to share it out as well. So we have those projects continuing, and we're so grateful for that. Again, that digital platform is really helping us to stay active and really in community. And then we have our 50-50 drawing. You can draw, you can participate in this, go online, ptalaska.org, certainly make a donation, but here's another way you can participate. Please, buy your ticket. You can get 10 for like $10. And it's a drawing. It's called 50-50 because you could win half the pot. That's exciting. The drawing will be April 7th at 6 p.m. Alaska time. And you can buy tickets all the way up to like 5:30 our time. If you're on the East Coast, do that calculation. You're 4 hours ahead of us. So be sure you do the calculation. But yeah, we encourage everybody to buy into that. And again, the drawing, Ben Brown, our Director of Development, will be conducting that wonderful, exciting moment. So please participate in that. And then also, I am really excited to say our next offering is a really mysterious project, y'all. It's called White Rabbit, Red Rabbit. And it's where you will see, it's a one-person show, and you will see the person for that evening or that afternoon, it's a matinee, they will be reading the show cold. They've never seen the script ever. And if you're cast in that role, you are not allowed, it's someone who's never read the script and you're not allowed to read it beforehand. So no director, no designer, you basically get sent the package. They'll open the package, take it out. That's it. They read it cold right there. It's very exciting. Right? It's got a kind of an edge to it. And this particular show has been it's been adapted for Zoom. So this is what the fun part is too. There's a wonderful way to engage because it's for Zoom as well. And here's the teaser part. And this is the part I'm not able to tell you completely, but just know we have some Alaskan celebrities and we have some Hollywood celebrities lined up to do these one-person offerings, these one-person shows. White Rabbit, Red Rabbit. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss it. In fact, you may even want to see it more than once because you're going to want to see how this person did and how that person does it. So I'm just saying, again, ptalaska.org. Keep an eye on our Facebook page as well. We'll be sharing with you all the upcoming news, and you're going to want to know who's cast in these one-person evenings, right? Yeah, it's very.
That's my first thought. Like,
Yeah.
who's it going to be?
Yeah, and they said, Leslie, you're an actor. Do you want to read it? Go, oh no. I have to be responsible. I better read it first and make sure this is something we want to do and can do. And sure enough, I did. We do.
Oh,
We do. So yes, so stay with us.
this is full of suspense. I am so excited. I've heard you talk about this a couple of times, and it's so
Yeah, I
great.
see Erica. Yep, Hollywood celebs, people.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt. Hello.
And Alaskan, we have Alaskan icons that are going to read with us, and talented, figures.
Jewel is from Homer.
What? I didn't know that. How come I didn't know that?
So she could do it. She could sing it. I don't know.
Okay, that's good to know.
That is really exciting. And when is that? When is it?
We will start mid-April.
Okay.
And we'll start to bring it in, and it'll go through early May. So yeah, so watch our Facebook page and of course our website, and then if you do get our email, newsletter, of course you'll get the word there. Yeah,
it's gonna be. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Mm-hmm. And you can try to bribe me. You can try instead use that money for the 50-50. You won't get it out of me. You won't get it out of me. Just go 50 instead and put it toward that.
That's a good point. And management from on high has informed me that only Alaskans can participate in the 50-50 raffle. So if you're a Hollywood celebrity, you are not allowed to participate.
I didn't know that. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm glad to know that.
That is a perk of living in Alaska.
Oh, wow. Okay, we'll keep the money in our state. Right on. Let's keep it on. Keep it all here at home. Yeah. Well, so Allison, thank you so much for a beautiful, beautiful host. You were hosting beautifully, a beautiful program today. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I'm beyond grateful. Thank you so much, Leslie. I feel like I learn so much anytime I'm with you, and I feel like I'm becoming more and more of a sponge. I feel so grateful that we had this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and congratulations to you and Jake. I know there'll be news coming
true.
soon as well.
There's going to be another Perseverance Theater Company member, a little teeny tiny one in a couple of months.
So excited. Yay.
Thanks, Leslie.
Okay.
And thank you, everyone, so much. I love seeing all the names in the comments and all of the familiar names for tuning in. It's exciting to see all these names that I know from across Alaska and beyond. And I want to thank the City and Borough of Juneau and the Municipality of Anchorage for their constant support of Perseverance Theater. And of course, thank you to Leslie and Molly for our conversation. Please be safe, everyone. Get vaccinated, wear a mask so Perseverance Theater can open up in person to continue to create theater by and for Alaskans. Gunash Chish.